I was literally terrified, always, like every audition, like sick to my stomach, kind of terrified of auditioning. I would, especially with those long rides up to, the bus ride up to New York, to think about what you're going to be going through. Hi, I'm Gene Connelly. I'm a local Lehigh Valley actor, filmmaker, producer, a little bit of a writer. The current board president of Fade In, Fade Out, which is a local filmmaking consortium that helps promote local filmmaking in the Lehigh Valley.
You and I have worked together on a couple of short films, but I don't think I've ever really gotten the story of why acting. What made you want to do that?
I sort of fell into it. I mean, I guess performing was more of the thing I wanted to do first. I always felt an urge, a calling to do performing. First singing in bands, and then doing wedding work, a few things like that. Eventually, all of that led to doing musical theater. The musical theater led to doing, comedies, cabaret shows. Those led to doing local TV commercials, and that got into short films and more dramatic work from there.
So it wasn't something like as a kid, it wasn't something that you were, it's like, oh, I'd love, you seeing people on the big screen, and that's something that you wanted to do?
It was always there to act and stuff. But the story that I've often told, though, like I said, I was a performer and I'm singing in bands. And for a long time, as I was singing in bands, I had a specific thought of, like, I really didn't feel like I was a singer in a band. I felt like I was playing the role of a singer in a band. While I could sing, I could carry a tune, the real talent was in my ability to front the band. I probably became a better singer later on after doing musical theater and really studying the craft of singing a little bit. But in the early stages of singing and fronting a band, it was really that taking on the role of being the lead singer in a band. And I always just sort of had that thought in the back of my head. So it was no mystery to me. Once I'd ran the musical, being a singer in a band course for so long, that transition slowly from musical theater, to being on a stage and acting really felt like a natural route, and much more successful for me too. As soon as I started taking on acting roles, I was getting further with it very, very quickly. I mean, I'm not a hugely successful actor at this point or anything like that, but I have a bit of a name for myself locally. People know who I am. I get my foot in the door a little bit just by, having done this for a while, at least on the level of success that I've had.
When you were doing the auditioning part, did you go to Philly for any of that stuff, or was it mostly like if you were going to leave the Lehigh Valley area, you went to New York City?
Yeah, I pretty much went to New York first. Why? I can't say. Probably because it was more of a theater thing, and it seems like if you're going to do theater, that's really the place to go. It wasn't really a film thing at that point, or auditioning for commercials or anything like that. I will say, when I eventually, just a few years later, started auditioning down in Philly, I found it a very, very tough nut to crack, as I like to put it. They like to work with people that they know in Philly. They really do. Whereas New York, it was much easier. I mean, everybody walking in the door in its town of 10 million people is, generally speaking, a complete stranger and a complete outsider. So everybody's on the same ground in New York City. When you go to Philly, you find that there's a very tight-knit circle of people auditioning and working in Philly, and they really had a hard time, working with somebody outside of what they already knew. Once I cracked that nut, then it was a lot easier to get my foot in the door, because even if I didn't know those people, I at least probably knew people who knew those people. It became very, very easier, quicker. It wasn't that way in New York. In New York, you auditioned, nobody knew who you were. That's okay. The other 150 people they saw that day, they didn't know them either. I remember when I did go to New York then, and then it was a regular trip to New York to audition for all sorts of stuff, on other plays and on camera work, just whatever I could get myself into an audition for. And I'm pretty sure, in hindsight, there are a whole bunch of really bad screen tests of me, in some bottom, wastebasket somewhere in New York City, because I wasn't getting any of those jobs. None of them. None of the on-camera work that I auditioned for did I even get a call back for. Eventually, I ended up taking an on-camera course at NYU, and I don't take many acting courses. I maybe 4 or 5. That's all the acting courses I've ever taken in my life. And when I did take an on-camera course at NYU, it became very quickly where I started getting work. I got done with the on-camera course and auditioned for The Writer's Muse with Bill Harton, who was writing and producing that, who's now kind of the co-founder of FIFO with me. So I auditioned for that, like I said, the week I got done with the NYU course, and I got that job. I got the lead in that short film.
What did you get out of that class that I guess changed what you were doing?
It was a weird thing when you go to New York and you start doing theater in an off Broadway play. Okay, so it's 100 seats, not even. It was 95 seats in this theater, so much smaller than the Pennsylvania Playhouse or Monopco or any of these theaters locally. I mean, even Pennsylvania Playhouse is 185 seats. It's a much bigger stage. And I remember the director kept telling me, he's like, you got to make this smaller, what you're doing on camera. You got to bring this, down a little bit. You're killing the room. So I'm like, okay, so we bring it down. Even more so for the on-camera work. You can't act for the camera. You just sort of have to become and let the camera steal the performance from you while you give it. So there was a whole thing of really learning to not act so that you can just relax and experience the things that you need to experience on camera. And the NYU course was really good about that because I already had solid acting chops and very natural acting chops for stage. So the thing I really gained from the NYU course was all the little things that I just needed to put together. And the course was really well structured. It was their curriculum, a great teacher, Sandy Carroll, but she didn't write the curriculum. She just taught the curriculum that was already formulated by NYU. And it was very methodical for 12 weeks. Here's a skill. Here's how we're going to go over it. And you're going to do it on the camera. Next week, you're going to review it. And we're going to learn the next skill. So every week, it was just like building on building and building and building on what you did and constantly coming back and reviewing your work. And that really worked for me. That really got me over the hump of understanding, what it is I needed to not be doing in order to be successful on camera.
So you mentioned like that was one of the few courses you ever took. Why is that? I mean, was there a reason you didn't particularly find anything useful in classes, or did you find that the experience of the acting was helping you learn? Like, why is that?
I'm a big fan of learning by doing. One thing I've always felt very strong about with myself as an actor was that I have very strong instincts. And one of those instincts is to just be honest. Just to be honest as an actor, just to be honest to the character. What would this character honestly do? What would he feel? What is it that would make him say these lines that I'm given, right? So the idea of putting a technique or a principle behind that is very alien to me. And I understand that some people are very big fans of things like method and Meisner and those types of techniques. But I'm very anti those. I mean, you and I are sitting here, we're having a conversation right now, and it's completely unrehearsed. It's completely natural, hopefully very honest. I mean, trying to come up with, an honest response to the questions that you give me. If I place a technique, if I place a technique in front of that, I can't be my most honest self. I can't be my most organic self. I'm already artificially altering it by trying to place a technique in place. Now, that's not to say I'm completely against technique. Like I said, if other people find them useful, I mean, if that's in their wheelhouse, if that's in their tool chest, then that's a tool that they can use, great. I'll occasionally pull out a couple of Stanislavski ideas for auditioning because I find them very quick and very efficient. And sometimes I don't have time to really delve into creating a character. Sometimes I'm not given the resources for a character. And then in those aspects, having things like action words and doing very Stanislavski exercises for audition pieces, I find very helpful. But outside of that, I tend to stay away from acting courses. And the other thing too, with acting courses I found, and this stems from being a musician and being in bands before I was an actor, was, almost anybody can give a guitar lesson or a drum lesson. It doesn't mean that they're really that great. I got very fortunate in the couple of singing teachers that I had some really good ones early on. And the impression I got from other musicians that I'd met and from the success that I had with the singing teachers that I had was like, if you're going to take a lesson, only take it from the most experienced, the most successful people that you could possibly hope to take it from. Because if you take it from somebody else, you very easily could build some bad habits, build some bad thought processes into what you're doing as an artist. So rather than build those habits. I stayed away from those people. I mean, the couple people I've taken acting class, I mean, Sandy Carroll from NYU has been on Broadway. She's worked in movies with Matt Damon and Nicole Kidman. I mean, she's, somebody NYU would hire. I took an 18-week course with Kelly McGillis. I mean, Top Gun, Witness, whatnot, you know what I mean? Those are the kind of courses I would take. I took a 12-week course at Touchstone Theater in Bethlehem with Bill George. Again, that guy's like a local legend. I mean, he's traveled all over the world as an actor. Those are the kind of people I feel comfortable recommending to take a class from, because you can definitely learn something from anyone who has that level of experience.
And then you kind of touched on it a little bit there, but when it comes to auditioning, how has that process been for you, or at least changed over the years? I mean, like when you first started out as opposed to nowadays, and I mean, we could also kind of get into like the complexities of that, because, it used to be every audition was just you'd show up, you'd sit there in a room with people and sitting in line. Now, half the time it's on a cell phone and you're just cementing it. So how is that? How has the audition process changed for you, and how much, has it gotten easier or any different, or is it harder now than it was?
Well, I can tell you in the beginning, I was literally terrified. Always, like every audition, like sick to my stomach, kind of terrified of auditioning. I would, especially with those long rides up to, the bus ride up to New York, to think about what you're going to be going through. Even worse, driving to Philly to Kathy Wickline casting, and Heary casting in Philadelphia on the Schuylkill Expressway, stuck in traffic. Am I going to get there on time? And just a rack of nerves by the time I even got in the door. And that was consistent, like, for what seemed an eternity. But the turning point on that was, you do it for a while, and people give you recommendations like, use that nervousness in your auditions. And I never knew what they meant. I never got it. And then it was seeing Bryan Cranston talk about auditioning. And I'm going to paraphrase what he had said in a video that I'd seen. And he had said, it just totally cleared it all up for me, though, was that you're nervous and, they're on the other side of that door. And for me, what it was is that I really was nervous about, I didn't know what was on the other side of that door. And what I learned from this Bryan Cranston video was that the one thing you can count on the other side of that door is that there's some people in that room who are fucked if they can't find somebody to play this part. And that commonized it for me. Where it was like, okay, now my job isn't to figure out what the heck I'm going to do because I don't know what's on the other side of that door. My job was the same thing almost every single time, was solve their problem, be a problem solver for them, help do whatever it is you can to create a character that fits the mold of what they're looking for. And I carry that into pretty much every audition. And you're right, things have changed in recent years. Now, almost everything's a video audition now. And has been even before the pandemic, really. I mean, we do way more video auditions than in-person auditions, and it morphed too for a while. It's a couple of Skype auditions, but it slowly morphed into this, where you were doing video auditions, but anybody who submitted a video was really playing second fiddle to the people who showed up in person. That happened there for a little while. The in-person auditions were still much more powerful than the video auditions. But now it's really gotten to the point of video auditions, and even not so much how well you audition as a person, but what kind of quality video you're capable of creating, because a lot of people can't sort of separate that idea of, is this guy super talented, or am I being distracted by his lack of ability to produce? Now you kind of have to be good at all of it, because if you're not, you just sort of don't make the cut a lot of times. It doesn't seem to be as much ability by directors and casting directors to look past, video quality and the production level of your audition video as a whole, and just see what the character delivery is. Sometimes there is, but it's becoming less and less, it seems.
I mean, that seems like something that would just take away from your performance, or at least mentally you're thinking, am I lit nicely? Am I framed nicely? Yeah. That's anything you're thinking those things, that's taking your energy away from the performance you're supposed to be paying attention to.
Exactly. It does. So the people who just naturally are good at manipulating the technical end of things, and can make that a non-issue for themselves, and then they can focus on the acting. They have a slight edge in that respect. I have a feeling it's the cream of the crop of people being able to do both. It's people who can act, but also handle the technical end of it very easily, so that they're not overburdened and it doesn't take away from their ability to perform.
Mm-hmm. Does that add to the level of not auditioning by yourself? Like, one time I helped you shoot an audition.
Sure.
So does that become more important of maybe having somebody that's going to be your guy to help you? I know there are people who have their wives shoot them, or their
Sure.
husbands shoot them.
And yeah, a lot of people have that ability, and I don't. I mean, Tesha Nicoli, and Tesha's helped me shoot more videos than anybody, and we live fairly close. In fact, I live even closer to her now. It could be an excuse of why we bought this house. I don't think so. So that I could get to an audition quicker or make an audition tape quicker. Yes, that's a whole thing. But I found, regardless of that, if you have somebody who's there to help you, or if you shoot these things solo all by yourself, what tends to work a lot, it's certainly not universal, but what tends to work a lot is making your audition somewhat unique. Now I have a difficulty getting people to be readers, and because I hate asking people all the time. I mean, I've asked Tesha as much as anybody, and it's still, just trying to get somebody to free up their house and have me come over, or them come over here to be a reader. It's an ask, you know what I mean? And a lot of people are happy to do it, but I'm not so happy to be, I guess, that guy asking. So I have done it many times, where I'll take the audition piece and I'll skip having a reader. I'll skip it. If I feel like I got an audition piece and I can turn it into a monologue, I'll do that before I ever ask anybody if it's possible. Now, sometimes it's just not possible. Sometimes they have a scene that's critical with, you're being interrogated by two cops. It's like, there's just no way to do it, as a monologue. But there were other times where it was. I'm in the Blood Queens web series that gets shot in Easton and Bethlehem with Gabby DiMartino. And for my audition piece for that, the scene was the character that I'm playing on the show now, Professor Desdald, with three girls, with the three main, what they call the Regals on the show, Gabby and her sister and another girl. So how do you do that? And I was like, well, I just skipped their dialogue and turned this into one monologue of me talking down to these girls about why they're in so much trouble. And it ended up working for me in that case. And it's worked in other cases as well, too. But because it proves something to the person when you submit the tape and they watch it, it's like, okay, this guy's capable of doing something else. And in the case of Blood Queens with the character that I play, Professor Desdald, I think there was a couple of things that they knew that they were going to need. They were going to, whatever actor was going to play that part was going to end up chewing a lot of dialogue. They were going to give him more dialogue than anybody else, and bigger words tied together with, messy, spells of, and, connotations of these different spellbinding things, whatever. Very difficult dialogue. So the fact that I would tie it all together and make it even harder for myself and pull it off was a winning point for them. Plus, I think they knew that it was probably going to be a collaborative situation with whatever actor came in, and that I was already doing something with the script that wasn't there. Sort of proved it to them that I would be a real contributor in that aspect. So it doesn't work all the time. Sometimes it probably scares some people off when you do it. You're not sticking with the dialogue, but sometimes it really pays off to do it.
When it comes to like the film works that you do, I presume for the most part, outside of the commercial shoots, it's probably small productions, indie productions.
Indeed.
When you're as an actor, what are you looking for on those? Because in some cases, I'm sure there's a lot of inexperienced crew or inexperienced filmmakers, and some experience. I'm sure it's a good mixture of that. But for people, maybe if you're working on a film with somebody less experienced, what are you looking for on that? what are you looking for from them, and what are you looking to have as part of that experience?
First, I want a trailer. That's what I want. It hasn't happened yet, but that's really what I'm going for. And so, but beyond that, I'm looking for a challenge as an actor, and that's for the stage work too, if I can. I mean, it's always nice to work with your friends and work with people you're familiar with, but I don't mind a new situation, especially if it offers a chance to prove myself, a chance to, because as an actor, you're always challenging yourself. You should always be challenging yourself. I've said before that, acting, it's dangerous work, personally, you're putting yourself out there. It's a risk. And actors tend to need to be brave people, that are people who just don't care, but either way, that sort of works towards the idea of challenging yourself, taking a risk, putting yourself in a position that, of not necessarily knowing for sure, if you're going to be able to pull off a part or not, or how well you'll be able to pull it off. So the challenge is really what I look for the most, I think, as far as, sometimes you look for the paycheck, like, is it a part there? Are they going to pay me for this one? Okay. Especially the commercial work. Sometimes you get lucky and you find a really good paying gig and be like, you want me to hold a paint can in this commercial? I'm great. Yeah, that's fine. I'll do whatever. But, the indie films, tend to be, they're trying to tell a story and it's usually low paying or no paying even sometimes. And at that point, the real reward is in the quality of the work that you're able to produce, both on their end of it, the production end, like how good are they going to make this look? And to me personally, how good a job can I do for this part? What can I bring to this film? How can I push myself as an actor and make myself better than I was before this film?
Well, Gene, thank you very much for talking to me. I really do appreciate it. I really feel like, you've got, years of experience that I think people will find hopefully helpful. And maybe even a little inspirational.
Yeah. Well, that would be nice.
But I thank you very much. I appreciate it.